And welcome back to the Daily Space Weather. Looking at the sun at 193 angstroms, we see a giant coronal hole straddling the equator, mostly north of it, but really a large portion of the visible part of the disk. Awaiting a magnetic connection for that, we finally saw another 6.4 magnitude earthquake and a very low levels of solar activity. Cheers to whoever that was in yesterday's electric view conversation who thought this solar output would go even lower, with which I disagreed. But anyway, here's the view at 171 angstroms. Not a lot going on. Let's look at 304 angstroms to see if there are any filaments around, and then move on to a lot more stuff. By the way, this track's called Unified Theory 3 and is available in the links below the video at soundclick.com/goldencatproductions. Add it to your MP3 collection or stream it for free. Not a lot going on that solar disk. Now, yesterday we were on Electric View, so take a look at that if you haven't seen it yet. And please take the time to press like and subscribe on YouTube. And thanks to our new subscribers, donors, etc., please support the channel via PayPal if you like, if you are able, as YouTube pays us precisely $0 for these videos. We also have a Hemp Lucid Spaced Out campaign specifically formulated for our spaced out viewers, also linked below the video. So click that if you're in the market for CBDs, but mainly support us via Patreon. That's our main source of income on this channel. So check that out, patreon.com/smAsho. Get the updates before everybody else. We've been known to predict things a little ahead of the curve, as well as announce things like coronal mass ejections before anybody else, including NOAA and NASA. Let's talk about the 10.7 centimeter radio flux, since it's all the way down to 65 true solar minimum conditions, folks. Now, Canada's been measuring the 10.7 centimeter radio flux since 1947, and this is a good proxy for sunspot number, as we can measure this even on cloudy days from the Earth. And, you know, back in the day, we couldn't really see anything on a cloudy day, since we didn't have things like space telescopes and the SDO and the SOHO and so on. Anyway, Arthur Covington discovered that the 2800 megahertz, otherwise known as the 10.7 centimeter radio flux solar output, varied. And we're not going to talk about black body emissions in a hot ball of gas or anything like that at this moment. But in any case, we have left links to the history of the 10.7 centimeter radio flux below the video. And here's a graph showing you all the data since 1947. Now, that page we were just on will tell you that it goes all the way down to 50, although we don't see it at 50 on this graph. So on the left scale is the sunspot number, and the right scale is the 10.7 centimeter radio flux. And as you can see, sunspot number goes all the way down to 0, obviously, since we've had 0 sunspots for a large portion of the year 2019. And the red bar and the graduations on the right, that's the 10.7 centimeter radio flux. And you can see really, it doesn't really get below 65 or so. Let's hope it doesn't, as solar activity is weak to begin with. And welcome to the solar minimum. The thermosphere is cold. Everything's cold. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. X-ray flux is totally flatlined. No surprises there. And let's take a look at the real-time solar wind. We see the BT/BZ is all over the place since about 20 o'clock UTC. And the phi angle shifting around. It looks like we had a magnetic connection here for a while to that coronal hole. Would be no surprise to see that reconnect soon at any point. And anyway, the current phi angle is at 63. Solar wind density very low at 1.2 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed 332. Solar minimum all over it, folks. Solar minimum all day. The geomagnetic space is looking pretty weak also. Here's 4 hours of the magnetosphere movies, courtesy of University of Michigan. Not as weak as we've seen it here, as the solar wind density is a little higher than it's been in the past couple days. There's your 4 hours of data. And we're not going to see any really significant ground magnetic perturbations, but we'll run the data set anyway. There's the space weather modeling framework version of the University of Michigan Geospace Model V1.5. And not a lot going on right now, folks. Looking weak, weak, weak. And there's 4 hours of data, or lack thereof. Again, I've drawn in this orange bar here to show you where 65, I'm sorry, to show you where 70 is, and we're well below that right now. And while we've already seen cycle 25 behavior from the sun, it's still solar minimum, and the number of sunspots is quite low, quite low. The overall activity quite low. There's the GOES magnetometer. We're seeing fairly weak magnetometer readings as we've forecasted. And here's the Gong 2, which is where we get that forecast from. This data, 1 hour and 25 minutes old. And we do see a little bit of plasma suspended out here. And when we get into more direct field force lines, the magnetometer will spike up a little bit. But nothing too exciting about to happen there. Let's look at the last frame. And that's the source of the weak magnetometer data. As opposed to the lines connecting all the way to the sun, it's connecting to a bunch of plasma suspended out there. And that's associated with the coronal hole, folks. Charging hazards are non-existent, as electron flux levels are very low, and we see the Kp down at 1. And there's your GOES electron flux, looking at the GOES 14 and 15. Very low levels of electrons, as well as relativistic electrons. We expect GPSs to work quite well. The F2 layer is looking quite anomalous here around the equator. Looks like some ion fountaining going on there, as we see a very long blob of charged up region, even when it's dark. Kind of interesting. And let's bring up the last image here. And there's the last image, 7:30 UT. Looking a little more normal at this point. Earlier, within the last 6 hours, it was looking a little anomalous. Here's your earthquake rundown for the past 24 hours. We see a 4.8 at Tonga. That's 8 o'clock UTC yesterday. As well as a 5.3 right in the same location there, next to 5.2 at the Philippines. That one occurring about 50 minutes past that Tongan quake. And here's a 4.8 right in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean. Next we see a 4.3 at depth at Argentina, as Western South America still my favorite spot for the 7 magnitude earthquake drought to end. We've seen the most deep quakes there, in my opinion. Maybe not the deepest, but the most deep quakes. Next we see a 4.3 in Indonesia, this one coming in at 11:49 UTC yesterday, followed by a 4.9 at the Philippines, a 5.1 at the Philippines, a 4.7 at the Philippines. So a little uptick there. Perhaps aftershocks of that recent 6.4 magnitude quake at the Philippines. Here's a 4.5 at Vanuatu, that one at depth, 159 kilometers. Next, a 4.5 at the Philippines, right in that same location. And then a 4.7 farther north. Next, we see a 4.4 at Indonesia, that one at 21:01 UTC. Couple hours before midnight there, and that's universal time. 4.6 in Indonesia, 4.6 at the Solomon Islands, So a bit of an uptick there around Oceania, north of Australia. And the largest quake of the past 24 hours is this 6.4 at Vanuatu. Could be the predecessor to a larger quake there. That one at 226 kilometers. There's a coronal hole facing the Earth right now. So a magnetic connection could be a further warning. Don't go off alert because you saw that 6.4 at Vanuatu. That is an indication that a larger quake could happen at the surface, and that would be over a 7 magnitude quake. So Vanuatu and Western South America are my favorite spots for the end of the 7 magnitude earthquake drought, which has been going on for an inordinate period of time. Let's look at the windy.com pressure maps. We'll advance that one day. See if we see any oddities in low pressure systems, skirting plate boundaries, moving backwards, etc. I don't really see any anomalous lows around Oceania. Powerful low over the Great Lakes again, though, it looks like, folks. And there we are into tomorrow. Let's get rid of that and move on to the volcano rundown, which includes Shivaluch, although volcanic ash not identifiable in satellite imagery. Also, we see Mount Abico producing a 10,000-foot plume. Mount Aso, volcanic ash cloud unknown. Don't pole vault Mount Aso. Could be dangerous. Mount Takono exploding, 7,000-foot plume there. Popocatépetl exploding, 22,000-foot plume there. Venador exploding, 15,000-foot plume there. Sabancaya exploding, 24,000-foot plume there. Copahu, not identifiable in satellite data, must be cloudy there. And although Nevados de Chilean's volcanic ash cloud is not identifiable in satellite data, please do not do a back handspring over Nevados de Chilean. Milky Way galaxy team for the win. That's where planets and the moon are and so on. Let's advance it 1 week. And there's where we'll be in 1 week at another new moon. Where will you be when Deneb sets? Again, did you watch our video yesterday on electric view? It was pretty lengthy. It included a lot of interesting commentary by a lot of interesting folks. And thanks for everybody for tuning in for that. We had like well over 60 people there for a while on the live chat. It was great. I haven't looked at the total numbers yet, but cheers and thanks Neil and company. Anyway, there's where stuff is above my head. Check out in-the-sky.org. If you want to make yourself a sky map, go up here to charts and click all sky charts and then put in your zip code or whatever. And you'll know where things are. I like to draw in the ecliptic, personally. And here's a lightning map, and we see the south central U.S. getting pummeled here. Let's zoom in. Next time you hear thunder above your head, check out lightningmaps.org. Heads up Memphis, you might be in the crosshairs. Little Rock. Shout out Little Rock. There's thunder rolling in. And yes, lightningmaps.org will give you some estimation of when the thunder will arrive. It's quite interesting. Check it out sometime. And there's the U.S. Doppler radar. Let's zoom in on this area around the Missouri-Arkansas border, as they're getting pretty hit right there. Let's play the animation. And there's that storm. It looks like it's moving fast, folks, so that's at least one good thing. And let's look at the U.S. water vapor map. And there's that information if you're wondering how those things are going to move around. Major convergence zone right there over Texas. And we'll zoom in on that in one moment. Let that play through one more time. All right, and there's that zone, and you can see this dry air kind of holding all this moisture in place here, preventing it from moving to the south and creating massive pressure gradients. And here's the area farther north. We see this swirling low pressure system here. Not particularly strong, but over Nebraska and South Dakota. And moving on. Two of the jet streams of the Western world. There's your standard extreme meridional jet stream flow. And here's the jets of the Eastern world. Not quite as extreme over there, but a massive convergence starting right in the Western Pacific. And let's move on to more stuff, such as that is censored and that is a sinkhole. Were you aware that inflation has begun and the Fed has restarted QE? Now, the Fed's trying to pretend that we're talking about the Federal Reserve now, folks. Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the United States, has started increasing its balance sheet. You can see it was quantitatively tightening until September, where it suddenly added $60 billion, $200 billion in 1 month. The fastest rate of increase since the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis. What does this mean? It means inflation is going to increase as they increase the amount of liquidity in the money supply. The Fed's trying to tell you that it's not QE. And if it looks like QE and it quacks like QE and it stinks like QE and it causes your dollars to be devalued like QE, it's QE. So who cares what the Fed says? Links to this article also below the video. Were you aware of the civil unrest all around the world? Happening in Chile and Hong Kong and in Europe and all over the place. The UK complaining about Brexit or lack thereof. Links to this article also. Let's hope America doesn't join the party. Thanks Smash Team for viewing the videos, and stay tuned for 2 bonus features. Starting with a clip from yesterday's Electric View video. Through the entire galaxy looking like this. It's not just like a beam of cosmic rays getting here from Cygnus X3. There's a sheet that's been spewed out for who knows how long. Anyway, check out that video. We'll link this below this video also if you want to watch the entire session yesterday with Neil and company. Thanks again, Neil. And if you were wondering, there's a solar polar field graph. And let's look at the 131 angstroms view for a change. This, like the 94 angstrom, takes actually 10 pictures per minute instead of only 2, like the rest of the cameras. So this gives you a little bit more temporal resolution if you see a thing like a solar flare. Let's give a close-up of the north region. And there's the north region. And here's the southern region. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We are out of here. Remember, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink it. If you drink, stare at the sun anyway. Just don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, become a patron. And may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.